Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar all about submitting your payroll to HMRC. My name's Calvin and I will be your host and presenter for today's session, and I'm joined by Duncan, who'll be in the background answering any questions that you might have throughout the session today. So feel free to ask those questions while we go through. So first we'll be having a look at an FPS. So what is an FPS and what is included in the FPS? Next, we'll be moving into an EPS. So again, what is an EPS and what's included in one of those submissions? Then we'll be reviewing submissions. So we'll be having a look at reviewing submissions. And this is where to look in order to review any of the submissions that you have sent. And finally, we'll be covering off some further support and questions. Now, we do have the session scheduled for half an hour, but this is a nice quick learn one. So it may well be that the session doesn't run for the full 30 minutes, but we've just got that time scheduled in to make sure we can answer as many questions as possible. So let's begin and let's start off with having a look at the FPS, or full payment submission. So what is an FPS? So a full payment submission, or FPS, sends your payroll information across to HMRC. Now these must be submitted after processing each pay run, and you will only send one per pay frequency. So if you do have multiple frequencies, you may be sending multiple ones, but it is one per pay frequency. So it's one for monthly, one for weekly, etc. Now with the FPSs as well, they must be sent on or before your pay date. So do keep that in mind as well. So what's included in an FPS? So firstly, the payments and deductions for your employees. Next, we'll have a look at employer and employee information. Apologies, got them mixed up there. National insurance and PAYE information. New starters or leavers. If you start paying someone a workplace pension, this is also included in an FPS. If an employee becomes a director, this information will also be included in an FPS, and any statutory payments that you have paid to an employee. So what we'll do now, I'm going to bring up our Sage 50 payroll program, because we're going to jump in and we're going to have a look at an FPS and we're going to submit one as well. So here we are in our program. So you'll notice first of all from the data that we have on screen that we have a last updated date of the 31st of July. Now we are a monthly payroll here, but you'll notice the last FPS date is June. So that's how you can recognize when the last FPS you sent was. You have a column here with last FPS date. So let's go ahead and highlight everybody, and you'll find your option for FPS in full payment submission in the tasks list along the left. For those of you who use the payroll process map, which can be found in change view up here, your FPS can be found as a box in the process map over here towards the end, because it is one of the last tasks you will do as part of your pay run. So you can either click on the box or you can click on full payment submission over here on the left. Don't worry about the red warnings. We're going to probably see a couple of these, but this is just purely because we're in a classroom environment, so we're not submitting anything to the real HMRC. You won't get this. So let's tick on that box, click continue. This is the screen you'll get first. Click continue again. Here you'll be able to double check that all of your details are correct, so your gateway registration and your company details. Then you'll hit submit. And on this screen, you'll see that we do have our liabilities for the tax month of 4. So remember, it goes off tax months. And if I scroll down, we have a leaver as well, so you can find the leave date. And of course, if you do have any starters, you will see their start date in this column as well. Now you can print this page if you wish, but we're going to get on to reviewing a little bit later on, but you can keep that for your records. Then all you need to do is click submit. And it might take a little longer than what that did, as I mentioned, because of the test environment that we are in. It doesn't go anywhere. So it went really quickly, and you'll get a nice message to say the submission of your data has been successful. If I click close on this, you'll notice that our last FPS date has now changed to the 31st of July. Why the 31st of July? That is because that's what my process date is set as. If you have a look in the bottom right hand corner here, you'll see these dates down there. That's my process date. So it's the 31st of July. So your last updated and your last FPS date should always match. So that's an FPS, or full payment submission. So in terms of processing, not a great deal to it. It just all includes the information that HMRC require for your pay run. So that moves nicely into an EPS, or Employer Payment Summary. So what is an EPS? Well, an EPS, or Employer Payment Summary, is sent alongside an FPS, so it is a different submission. An EPS is also sent when you're claiming employment allowance at the beginning of the tax year, so you only do this once, remember. So we covered that in our year-end webinars, which wasn't too long ago, a couple of months ago now, but you will be sending an EPS to claim your employment allowance. You would also send an EPS if there's been no pay in a tax month. So if you've not paid anybody for a full tax month, for whatever reason that may be, you would send an EPS to inform HMRC. Now, the deadline for an EPS is slightly different to an FPS. It doesn't matter about your pay dates with these, but there is a deadline of the 19th of the following tax month to ensure that you're submitting it for that particular tax month. The other thing with an EPS is it does carry year-to-date figures, which we're going to have a look at now. So what's included in an EPS? So any statutory parental payments that are to be recovered, so any that you are claiming back from HMRC, will be included in an EPS. So remember, what you've paid and what you owe is sent via an FPS. This will be what you're claiming back. You'll also use an EPS to report any apprenticeship levy, any CIS deductions information as well. So you'll be submitting an EPS for those two. And as mentioned, the deadline is always the 19th of the following tax month. There's a bit more information on EPSs and FPSs in the links that you'll find in the handout as well. So do check out that if you wish to have a look at those in your own time. So what we'll do, similar to an FPS, let's jump back into our program and we'll go ahead, we'll submit an EPS, and I'll show you those, the windows that are included in that as well. So here we are in our Sage 50 payroll program again. Now for an EPS, it's not part of your payroll tasks, so part of your processing. So what we'll do, we'll go down to e-submissions, and you'll see we have employer payment summary up here in the tasks list now, which is your EPS. So let's go ahead and click on that now. So when you first click on this, you're presented with a couple of options. So this is where you'll be adjusting your payment to HMRC because, for example, you're recovering statutory payments, you've suffered CIS, or of course you're reporting apprenticeship levy. So that's the most common option, which we'll be using today. Remember though, you do need to submit an EPS, to HMRC if you have had no payments for the tax month. So you'll see that is option 2. So that's when you've had no payment due for tax month 4. And again, there's a couple there as well for the previous and next tax months if you wish. So what we'll do, we'll select the top option because, as I mentioned, this is the most common. We're then going to go ahead and click next. You'll notice that tax month is selected as 4 based off our process date, and it's grayed out. So you can't change it here. You would have to change your process date. And if we click next again, we get to our window with the statutory parental payments. So we've had an employee who's been paid maternity pay, and of course we can recover those payments or a percentage of those payments depending on whether you are eligible for small employers relief. Calculates it itself automatically, so we have our amount calculated here. You can amend these figures manually if you wish to. However, please be aware, if you do amend them manually, you will need to do that going forward for the rest of the tax year. please be aware of that one. But you can change them manually if you wish to. Click next, and now we're on to the CIS deductions. So here you would enter the value of any CIS deductions suffered for year to date. Remember, they are year to date figures. So we're going to have 0 for this one. So we're going to click next again. And here is where you will find the apprenticeship levy. So again, year to date figures for your apprenticeship levy values does pull through automatically, but again, you can change this manually if you wish to. So we'll click next once more and then click finish. Again, as I mentioned earlier, don't worry about the warning that we're getting. You won't get this. Click continue. Continue again. So it all looks very similar to the FPS that we sent earlier now. And hit submit. And then submit once more. And that's it. So that is your employer payment summary now submitted. Now we recommend you run these monthly because it is all about the tax months. So even if you have weekly paid employees, the way an EPS works, it's all looking at tax months, hence why the deadline's always the 19th of the following. Okay, so please bear that in mind, which is why we kind of recommend you do submit these monthly. Also remember, carries year-to-date figures always. So the next one you send simply overwrites this one because it carries all those additional year-to-date values as well. So that's your EPS, so that is your employer payment summaries. So what we'll have a look at now is reviewing submissions. So you've submitted your FPS, you've submitted your EPS, but you want to check what was included and you want a record of that, or you want to just have a look out of curiosity potentially. So firstly, because there are a couple of ways of doing this, for the FPS, you have the FPS viewer in Sage 50 Payroll. Here is where you can view details of each FPS sent. You can export this to Excel or as an XML file if you wish to. You can, within the viewer, customize the columns that are shown. So if you want to have a look at just specific information and hide other information that you don't necessarily need to see, you can do that within the FPS viewer. And of course, you can print the overview as well. We'll dive into the program in a minute to have a look at both of these. But first, before we do, let's have a look at that second option. And that is the e-submissions log. So this is all of your submissions. So this is EPSs, your year-end submission, FBSs, can be found in your e-submission log. Again, you can view the details of each of those. You can print the summary, or you can print details as well via here. It'll show you the type of submission sent. So as I mentioned, whether it's an EPS, an FPS, it's your employment allowance submission, which is an EPS as well, or your year-end submission. It also shows the status of the submission. So if you're ever unsure whether it definitely went through or not, I would advise you to speak to HMRC as well if you're unsure, but you can have a look in the e-submissions log to see if it was successful or if it failed. So you can check the status of that submission. Now, key difference here is the date that is shown in the e-submission log is not the date that is carried over in the submission itself. So for example, I mentioned that it's used the 31st of July for the FPS that we submitted. And when I jump into the demo, you'll see this a bit clearer. The date is when you actually did it. So today's date will show on the actual e-submissions log rather than the process date that I used. Okay, so do be aware of that when you're looking at the date. So it is very useful to keep an eye on. So what we'll do now, let's dive into the program and I'll show you where to go to find both of these if you ever want to check your submission details. So here we are again in Sage 50 Payroll. So let's go down to e-submissions once more. So it's down here in the bottom left. In the top left, you'll find the e-submissions log and the FPS viewer. So we'll start off with the FPS viewer. So if we click on that, we get this window appear. On the left-hand side is all of our FPS submissions. So you can see. So here is the most recent one that we have done today. Apologies, it's in reverse order. I've got them sorted the wrong way. So the bottom one is the most recent one that we've just done today. So you can see via the date. So 2023, July 18, at 7 minutes past 2. That's when we processed it. So that's how you can tell which one it is. The format is the year, the month, the day, and the time that you did it. So you're probably going to only be looking at the dates, as I didn't remember that I did that at 7 past 2, so I wouldn't expect anyone to remember the exact time. And as you can see within this screen, we have our employees, their national insurance number, their pay dates. You can see the 31st of the 7th. And again, all of the information that we have organized. If you would like to add or remove columns in this view, right click on the top row here. Will do nothing. Apologies, man. Bit of a brain melt there. What you do is you click on columns in the top right instead. Thinking Excel for some reason. So there you go. Click on columns and you'll get this window appear. Here you'll be ticking each section that you want to include, or unticking if you don't want it to be included. So for example, if we wish to include the date of birth, pay frequency, and tax code to be able to view those, again, it's completely up to you which ones you want. We can then tick those, click close, and if I scroll along, so we have our default ones that are always there, and then we have, towards the end, we've got the date of birth, we've got the pay frequency, and we've got the tax code. So you can amend or add additional columns to view straight away. And of course, you've got the options down the bottom, so you can either print, report to Excel, or export to an XML file. So whichever is your preference, simply select either of those. So that is the FPS viewer. It's now time to have a look at the e-submissions log. So let's go ahead again, click on e-submissions log. So you can see at the very top, we have the dates. So again, it's in reverse order. So we will scroll to the bottom. Can, of course, click the columns to change this if you wish to. So you can sort them that way. So you'll see there's the FPS we sent. There is the EPS we sent. And you'll notice that the dates are today's date. And to view those, you can either highlight and click details, or simply double click if you prefer. So let's have a look at the details of the EPS. So you get your HMRC message, and you want to click more details, and it gives you an overview of what was included. So you can find there's our maternity pay that was recovered. We had no CIS deductions, as we mentioned, and of course the annual allowance for apprenticeship levy was 15,000, and we haven't used any. So there we go. That is the e-submission log for an EPS. So close that. Again, you've got the options to print. So this is the overview. This is the details. And if we do the same for the FPS, again, we get the same window. Click more details. And here we have an overview of the FPS. So as you can see, the FPS viewer does give you a bit more of a detailed overview if you wish to have a look at it in more depth. But here gives you your POA liability and your national insurance liability, of course, your leaver dates. Again, printing options are available. So that's the e-submission log and the FPS viewer, which of course allows you to go and check your submissions. When it comes to any queries about your submissions, whether they were correct, whether they were received by HMRC, it is always worth as well double checking with HMRC, because with FPSs especially, you can't reverse an FPS. If you've already submitted it, that's it. HMRC have those details. So everything would either need to be amended or corrected via their end. You can't send another one, it doesn't overwrite, it duplicates. So in essence, if you, for example, your liability, I am going to use simple figures here, are £100, and you send another one, for whatever reason that may be, it doesn't overwrite that with the £150 that was in the second one. It adds it together, so HMRC think you owe £250 rather than £150. So please bear that in mind when it comes to checking those figures. It is worth always speaking with HMRC when it comes to that. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. As I mentioned, nice and short, quick session today, all about submitting to HMRC, because there isn't a great deal to it. It's always good just to know where to go to double check your figures and what's included in those submissions. What I'd like to do now is just run through some further support that you have available to you, of course. The first being our help centre. So often is the case where questions come to you after the fact, so after the event has happened. Happens to me all the time where I think, oh, I wish I'd asked that question. If that does happen to you today, don't worry, you can go and visit our help centre at sage.co.uk/help, and you can search for the answers to that question here in that search bar at the top. That will search through our full knowledge base, so you can find all the relevant guides to it. You can also search through our support guides, so they're all sectioned off, so things like processing your payroll, corrections, online services, etc. are all done in various different support guides. You can access our free webinars via here as well. So we do webinars multiple times a week, so we've got 2 a week. The next one is Thursday, so be sure to check that one out. You'll see that there is a webinars tab at the very top right hand corner of the help center. Click on that and it will take you to an article which we update regularly. So do be sure to be regularly checking this to attend as many webinars as you like. And don't worry, if you can't attend, you will get a recording if you register. So if that's the case, feel free to register. And of course, if you do need to get in touch with us for errors or anything goes drastically wrong, the contact options are available in our help center as well. You can, as a bit of a bonus advice here, access the help center directly through Sage 50 Payroll by pressing F1 on your keyboard. And again, as a bit of a bonus, it will give you access to the guides specifically where you are in the program. So if you are in your employee record, for example, and you press F1 on your keyboard, the help center will pop up all about articles with the employee record in mind. So it makes it easier to find as well. So do be sure to check that out. And last, but certainly not least, we have Sage University. So sageu.com is a free resource where you can access e-learning, Sage certification as well, and bite-sized learning. And this can be done at your own time, in your own pace, or in your own time at your own pace, whenever you want. Now, I know time is very scarce for those of us who do payroll. So I do appreciate how busy you all are, but if you do ever get a spare moment and you would like to expand that learning on the product, or even if you use our Sage Accounts program as well, you can find access to courses through Sage University. And as a Sage customer, it is free. So be sure to check that out when you get the chance. Okay, so we've got 4 minutes left, so we'll spend that time answering any remaining questions that you have, and then as soon as time is up, or of course the questions are all answered, I'll pop back to say our final goodbyes. If you are leaving us at this point, thank you so much for attending today. It's been an absolute pleasure to see so many of you join us for the session today. You will be directed to a short feedback survey, and it does mean a lot to both myself and Duncan, who also runs webinars with me. If you do spend a little bit of time just filling those in, because we love to hear your thoughts and ideas about what you would like to see within the webinars, because we can't make improvements or try new ideas out without the inspiration that you guys give us through the feedback. So it does mean a lot to us, and we do read it quite religiously to make sure we're doing everything possible for these sessions to be as informative and of course as enjoyable as possible. We want you to learn, but also have a bit of fun at the same time. So it does mean a lot to us for you to fill those in. So thank you so much in advance. So I'm going to jump on mute now to help Duncan out with those questions, and I'll be back in a moment to say our final goodbye. Thank you. Okay, so we have hit the half-an-hour mark, a couple of minutes over there, but I can see that all the questions have been answered. So thank you so much to everyone who stuck around to the end and asked a question there and kept Duncan nice and busy throughout the session today. Again, I do hope that you've enjoyed it. All that's left for me to say is thanks once more. I hope you've enjoyed the session. And we look forward to seeing you in future webinars. Don't forget you can find them in our help center or head on over to sage.co.uk/webinars and you'll be able to access the webinars that way as well. And all that's left is to say thank you, and I hope you're all looking after yourselves out there, enjoying the lovely weather that we're having as well when the sunshine is out, and staying safe as always. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you soon.